So fun fact, that tall building over there used to be a mental hospital. The same one that I might check myself into if 100 Thieves somehow misses playoffs. Well, safe to say that everything kind of lined up perfectly for the LCS this past week, as all the results that we wanted to get, we kind of got. Team Liquid and Cloud9 both won their matches, both go into this week completely undefeated. The later half of this video will entirely be based on the title that you are seeing, which is, yes, a Team Liquid versus Cloud9 preview. My thoughts might surprise some people. But we've also got a very close bottom of the standings now, mostly due to the fact that Shopify Rebellion was able to pull off the upset over Dignitas this past week. And I got the chance to talk to Zeyzal after their first series win of the entire split. Congrats on your first win, man.
Thank you.
I know it might feel like a long time coming, but at the end of the day, a dub is a dub, and the bottom of the standings, or at least like the bottom 5 teams right now, are just in utter chaos and disarray. How are you guys feeling after the win, and how are you feeling about your position right now in the league?
I mean, obviously, position in the league doesn't feel that good, but this is like another kind of the same situation as last split, where it's not really like anything we can do, but we changed roster and we're better now, largely because we lacked, I think, like strong direction, and we changed from Tomio to Boogie, which obviously Boogie's played for like 6 years compared to Tomio professionally for 2, and Tomio's not really a leader. He's a strong call for fights, but not really like downtime leadership.
Yeah.
So we swapped to that, and we've gotten a lot stronger. So even though our position's bad, I do feel like we're getting better with Boogie especially.
I mean, you guys are only 1 win away from 4th, though. So, like, the position, like, it may seem bad. It's really not in the grand scheme of things. Like, this win puts you guys in such a good position going forward, especially given that you do play 100 Thieves, who's also even with you guys in the standings in the final week. I forget who you guys play next week. I'm not sure if
Why?
you Flacqua. Okay, well, top 3, a little bit of a different story right now. But
Yeah.
how are things coming back from the break now that you've had like 2 weeks of stage time, as well as I know you've been one of the people that's notably more critical of playing in the closet versus playing on stage. Does it feel good to know that you're back on stage for the rest of the year, and just how is the 2 weeks back from the break been?
So I guess first, I don't really mind the closet. I just made a funny joke. I actually couldn't care too much. Obviously, like I like having the audience there, and it's like a nicer scene. But when we came back to after the break, the first week, it was actually really done well. The second stage area, much better than the first time, which I think they kind of like had to throw together. This one they had some time to prepare.
Yeah.
But after a much stronger team, obviously, like it's easy to joke around about the energy games, but I mean, I wouldn't say either team played very well and that we ended up in winning positions, but like game 2, they have Hex Tech Soul. We're playing pretty well to stay in the game. We should have won that game too. Game 1, we set up our win condition with Infernal Soul, threw it away. It's like we really haven't played that bad. We just didn't have the ability to take the win somehow. So I would say that was like us throwing the games away, right?
Yeah.
And today we had a struggle in game 2, but I think that was more like it was a similar situation where we had to like take losing scenarios for a better outcome later, and we wouldn't do it. And I think that's like part of the problem with being a loser, like in the end result, right?
Yeah.
You get nervous when you have to take like small losses. You're like, oh shit, is this a repeat of the first 8 games?
You worry that they'll add up, and you
Yeah.
gotta you don't want to be death by a million cuts, but you have to take some licks along the way to get there.
Yeah.
Makes sense. I know they got like a big event going on outside at the arena today. The tailgate's fully back. I think it's like an Anima Squad thing. Are you gonna have time to check it out at all? Like, since you guys only play on one day, tomorrow will you guys be practicing, or will you get the chance to come to the arena and have fun with it?
We have the chance. Usually our schedule will be like one off day after our match, and then the next on days on. Since the break, we've pretty much been doing like third blocks every day too,
Damn.
which I think has helped us a lot. So our schedule is like we get the one off day a week, and then we do 3 blocks of scrims instead of the usual 2. And I think that's actually helped a lot in our improvement. But tomorrow we do have a full off day.
Okay. I know they have a dunk tank out there. I think Shopify specifically has it. If there is any former teammate of yours or current teammate, I'll let you throw somebody under the bus that you would just love to dunk in there, who would it be?
Maybe Keith. Keith, just funny guy. And I remember a time when I was on C9. I was on C9, but the roster was like Keith, Kumo, Golden Glue for C9C, right?
Yep.
I remember they threw Kumo in the pool one time, Keith and Golden Glue. So maybe they need a little bullying back.
A little bit of revenge back. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. Final thing I got for you. There was a piece of content that came out this past week of an esports owner talking about the importance of players building their personal brands, and basically how it, like, you know, even as an owner, in theory, if you grow your personal brand, it costs him more money as he has to pay you, but like, he wants to see players do more to brand themselves and make the league more popular around them. What's one thing that you think more players should be doing to help build their personal brands around the game?
So during my break, I was streaming, and one thing I noticed is I controlled like the narrative around my image so much more when I was streaming than when you just kind of like sit silently. So it's like, I think streaming should be done more, even if you don't have that many viewers. Like having, 10 viewers that defend you in the Reddit comments actually matters a lot. So that's one thing I noticed is like the perception of me was so much more positive when I was not just streaming during my break, but then also I joined like DSG and I got positive like fans from that and toast watching. I think like sentiment just changed to be very positive. And yeah, I think there's so much power really in controlling your brand as a player. Really, I should do it, but I haven't been able to do it, or just haven't done it at least. But yeah, I think it's really important to stream and at the least like say something on social media so you have like some control of what people hear about you or from you even.
Yeah. You can only be heard if you have a voice. If you're yelling into nothing, it's definitely tough. I appreciate the word, and I'll be sure to pass it out to a few people. Anything you want to say to the Shopify fans out there, the Toronto Canadian fans as well?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for being a Shopify fan. It's been a long journey, but I really think we're doing our best to improve. We're getting better, and we appreciate all the fans sticking around after the hard journey or coming on board now.
Looking forward to seeing the rest of it. Good luck with the final weeks, although as a 100 Thieves fan, I can't say I wish you all that much luck against them.
It's all right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. Have a good one.
So with Shopify's win, they now sit at 1-4, as do every other team but NRG, who is 1 game ahead of the rest of the pack going into the final 2 weeks of the regular season. This creates a very exciting situation purely because the way the schedule worked out, all the bottom teams are now going to be playing each other for the remainder of the split for the most part, and the top teams still have to play each other. So we're going to see a lot of shifting in the standings over the last 2 weeks, and that didn't come without its drama. Dignitas has notably been made kind of fun of a lot for how bad they were doing in scrims and how like positive they were being despite everything. The flip side of that was 100 Thieves, who have now made a roster change. If you didn't see my full video on it, be sure to go check it out. But Tomo is being brought up from Disguised Toast as Meech is being benched. Does this solve all of their problems? No, absolutely not. But maybe it could reinvigorate them, especially as they have both Shopify Rebellion and Immortals this week, as the remainder of their schedule. So they've got a chance to bounce back. For Dignitas, they should have beat Shopify Rebellion, but didn't. So now, like, everything's up in the air because Dig supposedly had an easy schedule for the remainder of it. But they now play NRG this upcoming week, which NRG can open up a 2-game lead over some of the teams here. Granted, one of Immortals or 100 Thieves is going to be 1 game behind them no matter what. But in theory, you kind of lock your playoff standings. I mean, God only knows that Shopify Rebellion can pull off the upset against FlyQuest. Maybe. Who knows? I'm not going to say that they can't. But I think FlyQuest is a whole other caliber than
Dignitas. So we'll see. If Shopify can pull this off, then oh man, the final week gets really interesting. But all eyes and all attention should be going towards the premier matchup of the LCS right now. One that has been building for years, realistically since the start of franchising, and is coming to fruition yet again. Team Liquid versus Cloud9. I know people were going to talk about the history of Cloud9 well before and how they won a lot during their early days. Team Liquid really didn't kind of keep this competitive until 2018, which is why I kind of want to draw a line at like 2018 on, where for the first 4 years, everybody kind of knows the history by now. Team Liquid smashed the ever-living shit out of Cloud9 and every other team in the league. I was there for summer finals in 2019 whenever it looked like Cloud9 might be able to do it under Reaper as head coach, went up 2-1, but then unfortunately lost Game 5 in finals. Team Liquid then starts falling apart in 2020, notably as Doublelift ends up leaving the roster and going to TSM, but Cloud9 wins spring. So hey, point for Cloud9. They finally get one on the board during the franchise era. It then followed one of the biggest collapses in the org's history and probably the biggest letdown ever, but overall, I'd still say more positive year for Cloud9 than TL. From that point on, it kind of felt like Cloud9 had established a little bit of a dynasty because they would go on to win 2021 in finals against Team Liquid, who notably did not have Alfari. That was when Armeo had to sub in because Alfari was having the migraine issues. But you had Blabber on that team. You had Fudge. You had the beginnings of what would become a staple for the organization moving forward. Granted, that was the Perks year, and they unfortunately didn't do all that well at MSI, but they did make it out of groups at Worlds. Team Liquid was never able to get the best of them throughout that year, at least at the times where it ultimately mattered. Fast forward to 2022. Cloud9 brings home another title. Team Liquid did make it to finals in 2022, whereas Cloud9 finished 4th under the LS experiment that kind of quit halfway through. But ultimately, neither one of them made it to MSI, so it didn't matter. And when it came to summer, Cloud9 retooled, Cloud9 won. Jump to 2023. Cloud9 wins spring again. But this is around the time that people start getting a little bit down on C9 because it kind of looks like Golden Guardians might be better, even if Golden Guardians can't get the head-to-head against C9. But ultimately, C9 still a clear tier above where Team Liquid is. Team Liquid trying to put the pieces together of a redevelopment squad, which even though Cloud9 didn't go on to win 2023 summer, NRG would upset them in finals, you did have Cloud9 getting ahead of Team Liquid, who dropped down to the losers bracket and had to fight their way through. Still got to Worlds, but notably with APA in mid lane. So yes, Cloud9 still got the better of Team Liquid. So from 2020 all the way through 2023, there was not a single time really where you could look at it and say like, oh, other than maybe like a one-off series or two, yeah, Cloud9 was the better team for a good 3 years, where Team Liquid only had 2, 2018 and 2019. But all of that evened the playing field this year, with Team Liquid taking home the spring title, coming through the losers bracket, beating C9, and now you have Team Liquid at 5 LCS titles, Cloud9 4, because 2020, 2021, 2020 spring, 2021 spring, 2022 summer, 2023 spring, 4. Yeah, so TL has 5 now to Cloud9's 4, but what does that mean going into this matchup? It means that from an organization level, they're dead even. On the Rift, I would probably say about the same. APA and Jojopyun are completely different players to each other. APA is willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of his team and get everybody else ahead, but also still put out a shit ton of damage. Whereas Jojopyun, he's the star. We saw it even in their loss last split. Jojopyun simply carrying everybody on Cloud9, other than Berserker, who did have a down split but kind of stepped up a little bit towards the end. When you go down to bot lane, Yawn and Core JJ have been crowned the de facto best 2v2 bot lane in the league in lane. In team fights, though, Berserker still holds that crown, in my opinion. While Yawn looks good, and I think overall TL definitely has some more macro prowess, or at least it appears that way early on in the split, not as much as of late. Again, 2 different styles. The opposite of mid lane, where APA is willing to wait and sacrifice everything, and for Cloud9, they're just get through lane and they're going to be fine, whereas TL, they want to stomp. For me, the difference is actually going to come in both jungle and top. We've seen Umpty somewhat choke at bigger moments internationally, but pull through domestically, and I don't think that Blabber's having the best year that he's ever had, but I still think Blabber's playing well. I think he's kind of going under the radar, and most people are not appreciating how well he's doing, whereas Umpty, I don't know, there's really like no individual player that I'm looking at on Team Liquid when looking at this matchup that like really stands out against Cloud9, with the exception of top lane, where Impact has always had a history of putting younger players
putting people that are on the rise, on the come up, back in their place. Thanatos looked a little bit shaky at the start, but he's starting to come around. But this is the big test. This is always the matchup that we look to see whenever younger players are coming into the league. How do they match up against Impact? And honestly, I'm expecting Impact to get the better of him in this one. That said, my prediction, my final one for this series, I put out a different one on the Crossover podcast because I need to try and make up points against Paul, but if I'm being honest here and being wholehearted, I like individually what each player is doing on C9 right now. Yes, they've played weaker opponents, but I like how they're meshing, but this will be like the first real test to see how their cohesion holds up under pressure, because I don't feel like Cloud9 has been under pressure at all this year. For the most part, it's whenever they flub up, and I can't even really think. Like, even if you go back to the FlyQuest series, it was like, oh, okay, they had a terrible draft game 1, but then they pretty much Goomba stomped game 2 and 3. And every series after that, like, even though they've had moments where they flub up, and it's not as fun to watch as Team Liquid's games, they are still good. And I think that's a difference that people are going to start learning here. Is like, these are two different undefeated teams entirely because of how they play. Team Liquid's play, fun to watch because they do all of this stuff. They're very proactive on the map. They will be willing to go out and take things, whereas C9, they try to be very methodical, very intentional with every move. It feels like the classic LCS style versus modern League of Legends style, which is why more people, I think, enjoy watching Team Liquid than Cloud9. But in this situation, I do think that C9 gets the best of them. That said, I think that TL gets the better of them in playoffs. But we'll see. Who knows? Let me know your thoughts. Who's taking this matchup of the undefeated teams? Who is finally suffering their first loss? And will it mean anything come playoffs? Thanks for watching the video. Be sure to subscribe down below if you haven't already, and I'll catch you on the next one.